Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Youth Room podcast. I am Keith and this is Ryan, and today we're going to be discussing the important aspect of social media, leveraging it for youth ministry to impact more students online. So stay tuned for today's episode. Now, Ryan, I feel like, have a little bit more credibility than people just starting off. We're not experts by any means, but we've been doing this a lot. I had some experience just to kind of share, some of this, but so I have a hobby business where I build vintage motorcycles called Seymour Cycle Works. And I learned tons about social media through that primarily. That was like my first, what do they call it? Like getting your feet wet experience of social media. And that's grown to almost 100,000 followers on Instagram. So Instagram was primarily my focus. I've also been monetized on YouTube, so I kind of understand a little bit about YouTube on that regard. And then we have been putting out this podcast since October of 2023. So depending on when you're watching this, it's been about 6 months, a little bit over 6 months of consistently posting weekly, creating content and then chopping it up into smaller chunks. And so we've seen that grow. I think when we added up the total views, I actually did check as of last month. So it hasn't included, as of right now, it hasn't included May. But I think we had over 360,000 views, cumulative across the platforms. And then we have, podcast, we have, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, which we're very big on TikTok, even though we don't really.
We'll talk more about TikTok later.
Yes. Yeah. So anyways, I feel like without saying, that we've figured this out and it's like, we're not there yet where it's like, we're the experts, but I feel like we might have some things to offer youth leaders that are just beginning or they're not knowing how to figure things out, so far where they're like, okay, I know this is important, but I'm just not quite there where I can consistently devote time to this, or they may have made efforts in the past and not been consistent because they haven't really seen the results or they haven't really seen that it's worth it really. And so for those youth leaders, I've been there too. We're still in some beginning stages with our own current youth ministry and our social media strategy, and online content, everything. You're a little bit further with your youth ministry that you lead, because you guys have been consistently doing what we're going to talk about today. And so this episode is going to be more about me interviewing you. Even though we've done this together, like with this podcast, but it's going to be specifically, we want to be the most helpful for the niche of, students on social media. How do we reach more? How do we leverage it? How should we view social media when it comes to, because I think there's people that they're like, no, social media bad. We don't want to get involved with that. But we can't just be an ostrich and put our heads in the ground and pretend like it's not an opportunity. I really believe no matter how you feel about it, I think there's an opportunity there to leverage it for the gospel, to leverage it to connect more students. Now, is it the be all end all where it's like, let's just don't do anything else in person and just focus on, no, of course not. But how can we leverage this? So we're going to be discussing a lot of that today and how we can leverage social media for more impact through students. Now, we are passionate about campus ministry. That's how I came to Christ as a teenager. We both work with Edge Clubs, which is the sponsor of this podcast. So there's no surprise that we are passionate about campus ministry, which we're training student missionaries to be missionaries to their school, and still even we learned, even with the increase of students going to, homeschool or Christian school in our kind of evangelical Christian world, there's still like 90% of teenagers in America are in public school. So we can't deny that public school strategy is important. However, for the first time in history, students are now spending more time on social media than they are at school. So there's like an average of I think it's 8.5 hours a day, which is bonkers to me. I'm like, where did they get this 8.5 hours a day? So they're coming home from school and then spending another 8.5, like another full-time job on social media. And so to say it's not important, or to say we should, just wait for them to come to us, or I think we're generally speaking behind the times when it comes to leveraging and utilizing online content and social media strategy to engage more students. So I've talked a lot already so far. So I'm going to ask you this question. Why? Because you really are you're seeing that how important it is. Of course, so I don't think you need to focus on like why you see it important, but what was it that clicked in your mind where you're like, no, I need to devote weekly time to this in our own youth ministry because of the importance of it. So I think everybody would say, okay, yes, it makes sense that it's important, but what was it for you specifically that clicked where you're like, no, this deserves some of my time on a weekly basis because it's that important?
Yeah, I think that's a multifaceted answer, but I think the big things that I saw were, number one, it's just simply a way to reach more students with the gospel, with the truth. And, our reach is limited. Our cause turf, our community that we're hoping to reach, and I know we have a little bit of overlap with y'all as well, but we're hoping to reach 28,000 students. Well, 28,000 students can't fit in our church. They can't fit in our youth room. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And, so I was like, well, how do we tangibly do this? How do we help the gospel go further than it currently is? And yes, we can spend all day talking about how relational evangelism is so much more valuable and effective than, just things being seen online. But at the same time, since we started doing this, we've heard story after story of students hearing truth through our social media or engaging with what we're doing on social media and really kind of that opening their eyes to the gospel. And so, for instance, one of the girls that we had, she came to youth group for the first time, and I was just asking her a conversation, and I said, hey, have you ever heard the gospel? And she was like, well, actually, I was listening to my friend's podcast episode that you guys did, and yeah, so now I know what the gospel is. And so it was really cool because it was like, okay, this is actually working. I talked with another parent, and this wasn't through our social media, but just through social media at large. She is an administrator at a local public school. And I just said, hey, is there anything I can pray about for you? And she was like, yeah. She said, this young this middle school boy started asking me some questions about faith, and in our course of conversation, he shared with me that he's Muslim, that his family's Muslim, but he actually trusted Christ because of he was exposed to the gospel online, and so he is living out his faith online, not able to tell his parents yet. And so to say that, oh, it's just out there, they're just views, they're just numbers. No, they're real people. And so I think that was the first thing that it really helped me do, is see that we could take the gospel further. The other thing, maybe a little bit more surprising that you might not think about, it gives parents a huge window into what's going on in student ministry. They're not able to be there in the youth room. They're, when their kids get in the cars, a lot of times, like, how is youth group? Fine. That's all they get. And so when they're able to actually see what's going on, and social media gives them a picture to do that, I found I've had a lot of parents share with me how encouraging it is to them to be like, wow, like, this is really cool to see, what God is doing in these students. And so I think it does two things. I think it allows us to take the gospel further, and it allows our front door, so if you will, to be so much wider, where everybody can now get a window into what's going on.
Well, and also when you look back at because you guys are creating some awesome content, and we'll talk about like the how you do that and like what that looks like for you guys, but it's kind of a cool documenting process too, where you can even look back and be like, oh, I totally forgot about that, or I forgot about that story, or and so you can even kind of use it as a documenting process of like what the Lord's doing and celebrating what the Lord's doing. And so one of the things that we were talking about before is some of the focuses on the type of content that we put out. So I think there's a lot of youth ministries, or a lot of ministries in general, that see social media as a bulletin board, where they're just like, okay, we're just going to post the details of our next program or event. And so talk to us about the difference between information and inspiration, and how that little tweak and that focus on how we're leveraging it can make an impact.
Yeah, I think as churches, we're not very good at this in general. We were actually kind of reviewing our kind of like, welcome kind of infrastructure and system, things like that. And most times when you go to a church, they'll hand you something that tells you when this group meets and when this group meets and when this group meets. And, we were kind of talking, we're like, is that really going to inspire somebody to get involved? Oh, they have a group on Tuesdays. Like, I wasn't going to, be involved in biblical community, but now I am. And so we actually switched it to where we looked back at what God did in the past year, and we just highlighted and celebrated that. And so now if I see, like, this is how many people trust Christ, how many people got baptized, I'm not sure what I believe yet, but something really cool is going on here. Maybe I want to check this out. Then they'll find the information. And I think that's the reality for us, is like our kind of way is like, hey, let's use social media to highlight highlight our events and get them there. And the reality is, no, we need to use social media to show them that there's hope, that there's something else out there.
Yeah.
And if a kid who's caught up in everything the world has to offer or is discouraged, you having a dodgeball night, like, we know that's good, but if they see that on social media, that's not what they're going to connect with. They're on social media, believe it or not, looking for relationship. That's in their world. That's the currency that online digital relationship. And so it's even been seen more of a trend as even social media has kind of become more community-based, where even on apps like Instagram, if you follow any of your students, you'll see they don't post. Like, they don't post on Instagram. If you go, they'll have hundreds of followers, thousands of followers, but they have 0 posts. The reality is because they just do stories. And so it's just for their, it's just for their friends to see.
Or they have a
Finsta, or they have a Finsta or a spam account. And so I think the reality is that, look, if we want somebody to see the truth, then they need to get inspired about what God can do for them. And saying, we meet this night, don't miss it. If we had $1 for every time a church said, hey, don't miss it.
Don't miss it.
And don't feel offended, because I've said it many times as well. But I think the kids' schedules are already chock full.
Yeah.
Their lives are full. They've got sports, they've got clubs, they've got school, they've got exams, they've got tutors, they've got, you name it. And so you just trying to compete for a space on the calendar, just as an event, is not going to work. But you showing that this is something that will invade your entire life, and this is something you learn as you go, I think it really changes the perspective.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about someone who they're tapped out. Like, I mean, we're there too, but so prioritizing creating content, can be like a daunting task. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from starting.
Yeah.
Or prohibits a lot of people from starting, is they just like, how can I even add any more to my plate? Like, when it comes to creating posts or creating videos even, and so I think that's where we've kind of learned to grease the tracks a little bit to make it easier to put out regular content. So I mean, just for reference, we, for Edge Club, for Beyond the Youth Room, we're putting out, I think it's like 35 pieces of content every week across 6 different platforms. And we film maybe 4 hours a month. Is that accurate? Like, I don't want to misspeak, but I think it's about a 3 to 4 hour commitment of filming every month. But that's, what is that, 35 times 4?
That would be about 140.
Okay, so 140 pieces of content per month from 4 hours. Now, it's not 4 hours of work, because there's editing a little bit, for that, but not a little bit, but a lot. Yeah. But I mean,
it's 4 hours for you.
Yeah. 4 hours for me. He does a little more because he edits our stuff down. But with that, though, it's the easiest it's ever been because of AI tools. So we're going to talk about some recommendations that we have. And they're probably going to change in the next month or two. It's such an evolving industry right now for AI tools and stuff. So we'll recommend what we use. But talk to someone who feels like they just don't have the bandwidth to create content. Does that mean they can't be focused on social media?
No. This is one of the pieces where we always talk about, leverage your students. This is their world, so help them to understand that this is where they can use their world and the things that they have interest in for good. So I think this is definitely one of those places where you can leverage students. For instance, one of the hardest parts for me is getting pictures to post on social media, because when at a youth event, I'm so busy with everything that's going on. We're not a big budget church where we can have a photographer come with us to camp, things like that, so just like giving a kid a phone and just being like, hey, can you just take some pictures? They are thrilled to do that. If you say, hey, just one of the other things is understanding that you don't have to create every piece yourself. What we want to be is content curators. And so not only, yes, we want organic content from our own ministry to highlight what God's doing in our own ministry, but if you've seen what kids are reposting nowadays in terms of Christian content, it is simple stuff. I mean, it is a blank background with a verse, and it's just, that's it. Because the reality is that it's become so saturated that authenticity and organic pieces have become kind of the trend again, where you can spend so much time trying to make your clips look the best or all this stuff. And the reality is the biggest things trending on TikTok right now are some person just holding up a phone, 2 feet from their face, just talking into it. And so I think you have to kind of get past this huge daunting marketing aspect, it's really just about consistency. It's not necessarily about, changing your whole schedule to focus on digital strategy. It's just about being consistent with it. And so I think leveraging students is a big one. I think understanding that organic right now is best. So even if you can find some time during your programming.
Okay, so just stop right there. Some people might not even know what you mean. When you say organic, I mean, we think of vegetables sometimes, if we're not into the
vegetable aisle that I skip every time I go.
So what is the difference in types of media? So, let's break that down real quick just to summarize some key things. So organic media is basically media that you're posting online that's not paid. You're not paying for other people to see it, like ads or boosting the post or whatever. So organic media is basically just creating a post or a video, putting it on a social media platform. And then you have paid media, which is running ads, or they call it like conversion ads, where you're trying to literally develop leads for a business or whatever. That's a little bit different. And then within organic media, you can have different types of media. So like you have, static pictures or posts, like where you're posting a picture, or even memes, or, like a post that you create where, like you're saying, like just a blank background with a verse. YouVersion does this a lot with their, their scripture of the day. Things like that, or you can have static posts, and those are usually on Instagram or Facebook. TikTok is video only.
No.
It's now not.
TikTok is now allowed for carousel posts.
Okay, so that's evolving too. So like it's funny because as I've seen different platforms steal different things, like stories came from Snapchat.
Yes,
and
this is
from TikTok.
This is a huge thing to share. Is that look like. People hear 35 pieces of content over a week, and it's like, you don't understand. All these platforms have realized the same thing works. And so they've all started to morph closer and closer into the same thing. So you don't have to create something for TikTok and something for Instagram and something for Facebook. And so and YouTube, it's all the same.
Yeah.
But you reach so many different people on the different platforms.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then you have carousel posts, which are multiple static images or videos. Sometimes even on Instagram now, you can have videos and pictures in a carousel. And then you have on Instagram, so these are the same type of content. You have TikTok, which are vertical, but now they're starting to add horizontal and longer ones, I think.
I know they've added longer. Okay. Yeah.
So usually vertical in orientation. So not landscape, but portrait mode video. And then you can use the portrait mode video for Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts if they're less than a minute, and TikToks. Okay, so now Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, and TikToks, now you're allowed to have longer than a minute, but YouTube Shorts are still less than a minute.
Yep.
That hasn't changed yet? Okay.
Correct.
And then, of course, you have long-form video. So I'm just defining some terms here that might be like speaking a foreign language to some people. But long-form video is usually stuff that's over a minute and it's horizontal in nature, or landscape film. So like if you're watching this full-length video on YouTube, this is a long-form video where we're usually doing about a half an hour podcast episode, and then breaking it into shorts, reels, TikToks. Yeah, so Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels are the same. So anyways, and then, so when we're creating one piece of content, we can actually get usually 9 pieces of content from that one piece of content that we're filming. So I just wanted to break that down a little bit. So organic media is the way to go when it comes to growth. So don't waste money on spending money on ads or boosting posts, because that can ultimately hurt you. So we've seen the most success. In fact, we've run ads and we were experiencing better results from organic free content that we were posting. So just want to put that out there. And that was recently. So it's not like, oh, that was back, when it was easier to grow in organic. No, organic is still the easiest way to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing to understand. And ultimately one of the other big things is just knowing that, like, again, this is a way for you to interact with your students outside of youth group. It's a way for you to, again, as this podcast is called, go beyond the youth group, to where, again, think about this. They show up Sunday night, Sunday morning, Wednesday night, whatever you meet, they see you. Okay. They expect to see you.
Yep.
Guess what? When the youth group social media account is liking their Instagram story, and this sounds so like, seriously, but it's their currency. It's how it works.
I was gonna say engagement.
And so when you're engaging with them outside of youth group on social media, it just shows them like they care. This is how they think. And now I will say is, boys as a whole, social media in terms of interactive and engagement is not really how they work. They're, I would say the statistics I've showed, they're heavily skewed towards like YouTube and just kind of just watching video. But it's been a huge way for us. And so there's so many just simple ways that you can do that without even having to create content. We post on our Instagram stories and do a sticker and just say, how could we be praying for you? And then we just make sure we say we won't share this publicly. And you'd be surprised what kids who are part of our youth group, who are not a part of our youth group, will ask for. We posted a story the other day, and it was like, what if everybody at Patriot High School, one of our local high schools, what if everybody at Patriot High School heard the gospel? And it was just a picture of Patriot High School, and then underneath it said, how will they unless you tell them? And, so it's just a reminder, because guess what? They're checking their phone in school. So you might not even know, like they might check. Yeah, surprise. They might see that in school and realize like, I need to share this with someone.
Yeah. So it's a good reminder. So a lot of the types of content that do the best online, we found, are focused on inspiration, which we talked about. So like not just information, but inspiration, education. So we can leverage online content to teach students. So what we've even been doing with this podcast is the most asked questions that we get as youth pastors. We're doing like a 1-minute answer for that. So maybe even take that approach. And you're saying, well, no, they could just go research and find out on gotquestions.org. No. Like, so contextualize to your own ministry. Like, it does matter if it's your voice. So even if you're answering questions that have been answered before, and I think that's where we feel like we aren't worthy to create content. It's like, well, no, someone else has done that before. It's like, but not anybody that they know personally, like you. And it's going to go a lot further if they see your face up there sharing it than some random person they've never met. And so with that, inspiration, education, and then entertainment is sometimes, I would say, don't even really focus.
It's not the category.
It's not the category you want to be in as youth ministry. Of course, like you can post a funny video or whatever, but or a funny meme that can be entertaining. But I wouldn't really focus, because we're not going to compete with the world and how they've designed basically like billions of dollars to be spent on teenagers capturing their attention through entertainment media. And so that's where you have to really compare yourself, or like to not compare yourself to people that are doing well in the entertainment spectrum. And they're like, man, if only I could just create videos like Mr. Beast. His videos are only entertaining. They're not really educational. They're not really inspirational. Some of the, like, when you're giving away stuff, but like, don't compare yourself to people that are just focusing on the entertainment aspect of content creation. Don't copy their style. You want to focus on giving value to the students that you're interacting with through inspiration and education primarily. So that would be my focus on content creation.
Yeah.
First of all, true or false, we should be following our new students on social media.
Yes. We have on our visitor cards, we have their
can put it
Instagram handle or whatever. And we go, and if they put it, we go and follow them that night.
From the ministry account.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not like personally.
No, I don't interact with the students personally.
And then so you don't think that's creepy if they're giving it to you for them to follow. That's not creepy.
Sometimes I even follow them when they don't give it to me. But only not because like I go and look for it. But what it works is like you see who they follow and you follow, and so if they see all their friends are following you, it's not weird to them, and that's what's been cool.
And then also, I would just say, be very cautious. Like we don't really DM a lot, on social media accounts, with students, whatever, just because like it's not public.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well, again,
so, I mean, we have policies like for our church, like we're not, like even text message, like we want to have other people on the text message thread, or
we vary very differently, but of course we try and be above reproach in all things. But I think when it comes from the account, it helps a lot because again, it's all. Yeah. I'm not the only one who has the login. Other people have the login, and
and also like with I mean, we don't have like extended conference. So if a student's like, hey, are we meeting today at 6 or 6:30 at the mall or whatever, like for evangelism, it's like, okay, I'll respond to that. But like not if it's like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Well, that's what I want to be mindful of is so like when we post that sticker, if they respond to what they want prayer for, that comes in as a DM.
Yeah.
And so then we're just like, hey, we'll be praying for that. So that's all this.
Yeah. So just be, very mindful of that. Of course, follow any church policies that you might have when it comes to communicating with students. Okay, so you can also use it to shepherd your students. So again, that content that could be helpful for inspiring them, like to share their faith, like you're posting pictures of a local school saying, hey, what would it look like for everybody to hear the gospel there? And even sharing testimonies. So record some student testimonies. And there's a big trend now for types of content called user-generated content. And so this is what the sales world is using, where it's like, and you've probably seen this, even if you don't know what it's called, where there's like a testimonial of saying like, hey, I bought this product and this is what it did for me. And I recommend that you buy this too, whatever. And it's not as salesy as that, but they're basically sharing their experience with it. And that's what's called user-generated content. And that is a huge aspect of leveraging some of the students that if you're not very tech savvy, ask students to say, hey, could you just get on and just share, something that we can post on social media about your experience. And, about what the Lord's been doing with, in your heart recently, or something that you've seen, in your friends' lives as you've shared the gospel with them. And just have them create it and then just send it to you, and then you can post it, with their permission. So with that, and then have them post it also as a way, it's like, and then tag your youth ministry. So it's like, wow, like
it's a super easy way for them to share the gospel.
So let's break down your content strategy with your student ministry. So we talked a little about what we do here. We record a half an hour long podcast and break it up. But what do you guys do for your content strategy when it comes to the content that you're creating?
Yeah, it's really difficult to sit down and create content from scratch. And that's what I found. And so video is still king. And so I was like, you know what? Why don't I just have conversations with students, and then there's unlimited content, and I just pull from it and just post it. And so we have a student podcast, but you don't have to have a student podcast. But we just started, hey, let's launch one. And so it's called The New Normal, because we want to see a new normal of what it means to live for Christ among teenagers. And so, I meet once a month with some students. I get parent permission. I have a huge list of topics, and I just say pick one, and they pick one, and I put together all the prep work and stuff, send them the questions ahead of time so they can come prepared. And then we just have a conversation on camera for 20 minutes. And I just schedule them back to back to back. I bring different shirts. Insider trick. Not that we would ever do that here at Beyond the Youth Room.
Yeah, I'm looking at all of our shirts hanging up there. Yeah.
But and so I just record them. And we have nicer equipment, but the reality is, here's the cool part. All you need is a phone and a laptop. You just need a phone to get video, and you need a laptop to get audio. And if you want to go for the big podcasting or long form, which you don't even have to. So then I just take those podcasts, I put them together, and then there's some great AI, platforms. One of them is called Opus Clip Pro. I don't get anything from them, but if they are watching and want to, I would take something.
Not sponsors yet.
Yes. And that'll actually create shorts for you, and you have to go look through it. But again, this is like this is if you just want to go for it. But the reality is, what it really breaks down to is kids telling their stories of what God's done in their life. And we just post those. And in fact, I couldn't even tell you last time we did a static post, because they use stories with static. So we use stories, we just post scripture on there. We post, hey, we're praying for you on there. We post those different pieces, but we've now launched 16 episodes on our student podcast. Nice. And what's cool with all of this, nerd out a little bit because I'm a data guy. You can see the portion of a clip. You can see how many people watched a portion of this clip based on viewers and percent viewed and all that stuff. So I can actually see where the gospel is in that presentation. And then that gospel, we always take that and make that a short. And so through the shorts and the long form, over 16 episodes, we have reached 4,428 people with the gospel.
That's awesome.
In context, in the same time, in person, we've reached about probably 400 people with the gospel. So that, you think of that return digitally. Now, again, relational evangelism is much more effective, is the way to go, 100%. But just where else can you just post the gospel and somebody else do the work for you of getting that to people who haven't heard it yet?
This could be a huge, so don't see this as the be all end. It's like, let's not even share the gospel anymore and just post online content.
Correct.
I don't think that's the way to go. But think of this as the proclamation of the gospel, and kind of
you're planting a seed that hopefully somebody else will get.
And then as far as like that relational connection, where we're sharing the gospel broadly, and then people that want to get involved further than that, will.
Yep.
And we're still sharing the gospel relationally and relentlessly with our friends. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit to some rapid fire questions. Some of these have to do with social media, and so should your youth ministry have a TikTok?
Yes.
That's it.
As long as it's still available in the United States.
As long as it's legal.
Yeah, it's now.
Now it's so basically, if people didn't know, tell them a little bit about what's happened with TikTok recently,
Yeah. So
as of, at least with the filming of this podcast.
yes. So the U.S. has essentially passed a bill that in order for TikTok to continue to operate in the U.S., it must force the sale from the Chinese governments, not to get political, but and so regardless of what you think of that, so
yeah.
chances
So
are,
is it going to be wasted time if we focus on TikTok?
don't believe so. No, because the amount of Americans who are on it and the amount of voting age Americans who are coming of age who are on it, I think they'll work pretty hard to keep it available in the U.S.
So I don't know if it well, and one, even if it's not if it's banned, it will still be around. People don't understand this, that it's not just going to be deleted from your phone. It's just you won't be able to you won't be able to download it from the App Store after a certain time.
Yeah.
If it's not sold. Yeah. And there might be someone that buys it. Although some people are saying that that's probably not likely. So it could still be around for a while. But it just won't have any new users after a certain point if you don't have the app on your phone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch-22 because people are like, I don't want to put that app on my phone. and so with that, there are ways of, like, you can actually post content on TikTok without having the TikTok app. Like you can do it on desktop computer now, which before you couldn't. So anyways, all that stuff, I would say it's still valuable. Students are still there. It's easy to reach more
So
people.
easy to gain
like
following.
You can have like your second video hit 100,000 views.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy the algorithm that can still push it out to people if it's good content. Okay. So your answer is yes, you should have a TikTok still.
Yep.
Okay. Favorite youth ministry follows on social media in the youth ministry world?
Red Pen Logic. I don't even know his actual name, but his account is Red Pen Logic, and what he does is he takes trending videos or tweets or X's, I don't know what you call them now, and he essentially breaks them down from an apologetic standpoint. And so it's a really easy way for you to kind of get some content and share that as well. He would probably be my number one if you have a youth ministry account. Him, and then this is so funny, but actually the one I see the most of is called Trust God Bro. Your kids have shared stuff from them too, and it just cracks me up. But
Trust God Bro.
Yeah, now they're about like this deep theologically, but hey, they're just putting God's word out there,
sharing scripture.
and so that would be a good one if you're looking for things just to repost.
So and you got to be careful of this because sometimes we laugh at stuff that we probably wouldn't post. But youth ministry meme accounts, like there's some quality ones, like where I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly like I needed to brighten my day up, and so maybe just personally following those, but some of them are, you can post it and it's kind of funny. But then I'm a huge fan of Greg Stier, of course. Like we had him on the podcast, and he posts a lot of good stuff. And this was more from, I'm just thinking of, I'm a consumer of social media to some point too. So these two were just more for my own thing, not necessarily ones that I would share, on our youth ministry account. But a lot of the stuff like quotes, from like, post on YouVersion, like anything that's just like a scripture meme, like, just words on a background, like, post them, tag them in the thing, or whatever. Like, so I've posted a lot of stuff from YouVersion over the years. So anyways, with that, those are some people that I would recommend. What is your most used meme or GIF/GIF?
GIF.
Whatever your preference of pronunciation is.
So I would say this is kind of a boring answer, but I think when you go to text somebody happy birthday, like it's not enough to just say happy birthday. And so I always use the same GIF, and it is the GIF from The Office where Jim and Dwight are wishing Kelly a happy birthday. They're putting together a happy birthday party, and
like,
they point up to the wall, and it's just old computer paper that says "It is your birthday," with some like deflated balloons.
They're just hanging. Yeah.
So that's probably my most used piece of content in conversations.
Okay, so I would say when I'm texting, the most used GIF.
Yes.
is I use this actually a lot, probably, and some of the students probably wouldn't even get it, but there's a lot of people that still watch Seinfeld. But it's when like Elaine from Seinfeld is like jumping up and down and like
when she like so runs in.
Yeah. So it's
not
like
when she's dancing.
Not when she's dancing, like that weird like thumbs up in the air thing, whatever. But no, when she's like jumping up and down, like she's excited, and so that's what I post. Some someone shares like something cool, I'm like yes, like, and then post that GIF. But now when it comes to memes, so one of my favorite ones is, and I don't even know what it's from. I probably maybe figure it out, but it's like the guy that's peeking around the tree and he has like his
yeah,
like this, and like every time I'm like, man, that looks delicious, and then like it's like the guy looking around the tree trying to steal a hamburger or something, and there's so many good uses for that. So anyways, those are mine. Okay, so let's go into some 1 minute questions before we close this episode out. And so for Ryan, your question, do we have a timer?
We do now.
Okay. If Christianity is true, why are Christians such hypocrites?
This is a tough one, in the sense that a lot of times that might mean that somebody's been hurt by somebody who proclaims to be a Christian, or just been upset or offended. And so if that's you, then hey, we're sorry. But I think it actually points to the truth of what we believe, which is we're all messed up. We're all sinful. We all want to be something that we are not. And Scripture actually says that. Paul says, I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things that I want to do. And so the reason why all of us are a hypocrite on some level is because we're all sinful. Now, when you look at the religion of Christianity, and you might say, well, they're a hypocrite. Jesus never called his followers hypocrites, but he called people who claimed to be his followers who weren't hypocrites. And so I would just say that, look, it should point to our need for God, and it should reaffirm that we are imperfect on our own.
It's good. 59 seconds.
Yes.
Not too shabby.
And I got started a little late, so we'll work on that. But
okay.
All right, Keith. A student asks you, and I'll get a long question, but then I'll summarize it short. Hey, the Bible has a lot to say. We're just going to go for it, and you're going to have to do this quickly.
Okay.
The Bible has a lot to say about sexuality or gender or all different sorts of things, but that was written thousands of years ago to a different culture. So isn't the Bible outdated today?
Yeah, so a lot of times that question comes from, cultural commands that were in Scripture, or, things that they described how they did things back then, either for the nation of Israel or even cultural norms, for when Paul was writing the epistles and everything. And so I would say to that is the Bible is a supernatural book that supersedes time. So there's timeless truths in Scripture. And I think the important aspect of interpretation of which passages should we obey or not have to come down to were those descriptions or were they or the commands descriptive of just how they were then, or were they prescriptive, meaning this was a command for all Christians. And that only takes some time of just really learning how to properly interpret Scripture and Bible study methods. And when you find out the Bible study methods, you'll ultimately figure out what is prescriptive and what is descriptive.
Ask me the same question. Is the Bible outdated?
Is the Bible outdated?
No. 0.9 seconds.
You did it in less than a second.
Boom. No, I like that.
The answer is no.
I like that cool way of thinking.
Prescriptive. So I think prescriptive versus descriptive is a huge, and really that comes from Bible study method. Like, you got to figure out, okay, if I see this random crazy verse that I can't, have any mixed thread shirts. Like, well, that was, so we have to ask ourselves, was that just descriptive for that time, for the certain reasons, or is that prescriptive for all believers? And I think that's where good hermeneutics or good Bible, study methods would help you determine that.
Yep. Sweet. Awesome.
All right. Well, that concludes another episode of Beyond the Youth Room podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are watching this on YouTube, there are several of you, in fact, a huge percentage of you that watch our stuff that have not subscribed yet. So we invite you to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you can see our future content pop up on your notifications. And also, if you are listening to this on podcast, of course, subscribe to the podcast so that you'll get notified when new content comes out. So if you've received any value from this, please share it with other people and head over to edgeclub.org/vault or edgeclub.org/training for our free vault of resources that help you succeed in youth ministry, or our student missionary training that will help your students to be missionaries to their public schools. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.